Good evening, brothers and sisters of Christ. Welcome to the Law of Christ Ministries. We are doing another interview today. We will be with Nikki. How you doing, Nikki?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Doing
Can
great.
you see me okay?
Yeah, you good.
Okay.
Good. Oh, it's a cool sweater you got there.
Thanks.
All right, awesome. Thank you for taking time to do this. So, as you saw Dale's interview earlier, it's kind of be the same kind of format. Going to be asking you different types of questions I may already know the answer to, but remember, people who are watching it may not know the answer.
Right.
So we're going to start there. Anything that you feel uncomfortable with, just let me know, and we will move on. All right.
Okay.
So let's start out currently. Tell me about yourself. Where you from? Do you have any kids? Are you married? Do you work? Tell me a little bit about your church. Just a quick introduction to who you are.
I'm Nikki, and I am born and raised in California. Never lived anywhere else. I've been married once, divorced once, no children,
Okay.
and I
And
did not grow up in the church at all. So
okay.
God kind of had a clean slate with me to do whatever He wanted.
Okay. All right. Tell us, do you work? Do you go to school? Tell us a little bit about your church.
So I went to school to be a massage therapist, and I did that for many years. And then I'm also type 1 diabetic. So when I started having a lot of eye issues with that, I stopped work at a spa, and then I started doing home massages. Luckily, with that profession, I could kind of just take it anywhere. But as we go on in the interview, you'll hear a lot of stuff that has happened in my life. So currently, right now, I'm not working, and the home church that we have is with you on Saturdays and Sundays, and also our weekdays as well. That's my home church.
Okay. Cool. And we've been since like what was that, November? I think, was it
Somewhere around there,
somewhere
yeah,
around there, towards the end of last year that we had
yeah.
started that. Okay. Cool. Okay. So let's get to it. So hold on, real quick. So the massage therapy thing is, so you're not doing nothing with that right now.
Currently, at the moment, no,
Is there a specific reason?
just health reasons.
Health reasons. Okay.
It's a lot of stress on the body, and we're not getting any younger. So,
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Take us back to your childhood, from what you can remember from when you were small up to the elementary phase. Tell me about your family, brothers and sisters, your parents. Were they Christians? What kind of an upbringing? What do you remember from being a baby to about the elementary stage of your life?
okay, so I grew up with my mother and my father, and I had a twin sister. I say had because she passed away a little over a year ago, but it was just a small little family. Nothing, not growing up in the church at all. No religion, no faith of any kind. Um, and from earliest memories, unfortunately, they happen to be mostly bad ones. Um, from the age 2 up, I can remember just my dad being very abusive and aggressive. There obviously was some good parts in life, and thankfully, I had my twin sister there by my side, so we had each other to play with and just go through that experience together instead of having to do it all by myself. It was comforting that knowing that she was there.
Okay. Well, without obviously going into detail, the abuse that you remember, was that towards to you, your sister, your mom, or just in general, emotional, physical? What type of are we talking
It was
about?
a
Again,
lot
you
of
don't have to.
verbal and it was a lot of physical when we
Okay.
were younger until I'll get into detail. I don't mind sharing those belt buckles that were really huge. They were like those bass
Oh
belt
yes,
buckles, and they're really thick and they're metal. So my
yeah.
dad used to beat us with a belt and with that buckle. And
At, at such a
my
small
mom,
age,
she, hmm?
at a young age.
Yes, at a very young age.
Oh,
Um, and my mom was the only one who worked. My dad was on disability the whole time that they were together. So we were stuck at home with dad, right? And mom had to work. And one day she found welts on us, and she threatened to basically put him in jail if he ever touched us again. So it got more of where he would try to hide it, like not leave marks on us. But of course, we would always tell mom, like, hey, dad's doing this to us. There's a time where he would have us stand side by side and like knock our heads together as form of punishment.
What?
Yeah, he would
Oh
put his
man.
hands around our throats and threaten us. And he would say things like, I wish you were never born, or I wanted boys, not girls, that kind of stuff.
That's awful.
Yeah. Eventually it stopped, but I wouldn't say that stopped till about middle school, the physical part.
Okay, hold on, before we get to middle school.
Yeah.
So during all that, how did that affect your, like, in school? Were you able to make friends? Were you a mean kid, or did you rebel? Like, how did that affect you during that time? I know it was a young age, but how did it affect you?
School for me was an escape. And I didn't have trouble making friends, but I was more quiet and reserved. Whereas my twin, called her Chatty Cathy, even though her name's Christine, but she was the more talkative one. I was the more observant one, more in the background and observed people's behavior. I guess I can say I was a little bit more cautious, but still friendly. I didn't repeat the cycle of my father, thank God. But sometimes it was hard to relate to other kids because they would go to birthday parties or have sleepovers and stuff like that, and I wasn't allowed to.
Okay. Did no teacher or anything ever, they didn't ever see any of the marks, or it was always covered because of the clothes?
It was always covered. Yeah, so
Always
no
covered.
teachers ever suspected anything. And I never said anything to teachers.
You know what's sad about it? That's probably very more common than we think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or, they'll say, oh, that was just a bruise. They fell off the playground or whatever. But
Yeah. Okay, moving forward, tell us about your junior high. That's where, the boys and girls start wanting to experiment, you start to like boys and all that kind of stuff. So how were you during your middle school years?
So,
And then how was it also in was your relationship with your family still the same?
so yes, I would say it actually got worse the older that we got.
Oh
And
man, okay.
me and my twin sister ended up moving, and our neighbor, he had a little karate dojo in his garage. And so me and my sister begged, like, we want to go do that. We want to go do that. So Tuesdays and Thursdays we went to do that during middle school years. And that's when the abuse sort of stopped. I'd say the physical part, because he went to go like smack us or whatever. And because in karate, you learn how to block things,
Yeah.
block someone trying to punch you or whatever. The first time I did that, the look on my father's face was of shock. Like, oh crap, she could actually block like me trying to go hit her. So he knocked that part off, but the verbal and the mental abuse got worse. And then there was incidents where he would lock himself in the bedroom, and there was bullet holes in the ceiling because he
Oh
locked himself
man.
in there for hours and threatened that he was going to kill himself. And we hear 2 gunshots go off, and we're just thinking the worst. And then so I ran over to my neighbors, the guy who did karate, my
Mm-hmm.
teacher, and had him come over and try to talk my dad down. And in the meantime, my mom's grabbing the gun, she's shoving it in the gun case, and she like gave it to me, and she's all, here, take this down to the neighbors. And so here I am in middle school age, just walking down the street with guns and a gun case down to my neighbors, where they had an actual, like, one of those really tall gun safes. And I was like trying to explain to them, you need to stick this in your gun safe and don't let my dad come get these ever again. So it was embarrassing.
Ah.
So
So
during school, I stayed quiet. Like, that's just been me. I've always been very, very quiet. Yes, I'm friendly to my schoolmates and stuff like that, but I wouldn't discuss that part of my life, and I wouldn't want them to see that part of my life. And I think my mom was kind of afraid that I was going to paint her in a bad picture. So I didn't really get to go hang out with friends outside of school.
So, what did your mom do though? I mean, you're already in junior high. You were like what, 12, 13 years, 14. Up to this point, there's been many years of abuse, and you've already told your mom,
Yeah.
and nothing was done.
It was a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting. And she would always say to my dad, like, how could you treat your own children this way? And what it was is that my dad, he's an actual narcissist. He has an actual disorder. So he was very, very jealous of his children because my mom was the complete opposite of him. My dad grew up where with narcissistic parents. They weren't very caring, they weren't very loving. They also beat him. And his
Oh,
mom always put the father before the children. And my mom didn't do that. She put the children first, obviously, because we didn't deserve what was going on. If he was going to be abusive and stuff like that, her children were going to come first. But
okay.
like I said, she was the only one working and having to support the whole family. So she was gone for 9 to 10 hours out of the day. Um, so I remember when me and my sister turned 16, that he kicked us out of the house. She dropped us off and he's like, nope, you're not coming inside. And so we had to go to that same neighbor that I took the guns to and sit there and like wait for my mom to come pick us up and have to fight all over again. It was constant bickering and yelling. And
Man,
still no one introduced God or anything to me at that point.
nothing. Okay, all right. So let's move forward. Let's talk about the high school days. All right, so you're in high school already. What's that, like 15 and 16 and up? So
Yes.
how does your years of abuse, how does that affect your, because high school, that's when kids start to get a little crazy, things are starting being done. So tell us how your high school 4 years was.
High school for me, I didn't get crazy. I was still very introverted. I had my small little group of friends. They didn't really know what was going on with the abuse that was in my life. It wasn't until later, which we'll get to, that I started doing some crazy stuff. But there was times where I would go to my counselor and cry, and then they're like, "Oh, let's do family counseling," and that's when I was like, "Oh no."
Uh, yeah,
No, you can't bring him in here and do that because once he knows that I'm speaking about it, I'm gonna get beat.
yeah.
So I wasn't allowed to go to football games, didn't even go to my prom, that kind of stuff. I was still keeping myself at a distance. I would be fine while I was at school, but after that, you didn't know what was going on in my life. But um, freshman year, my cousin was a senior. So I
Mhm.
started hanging out with him a little bit, and he's the one who introduced me to youth group. So I would go to youth group on Wednesdays, and
Okay.
I
Your
did
cousin's a
accept
believer.
Jesus. Yes, well, he was. He's not anymore. Um, but he was for a long time because his mom, my aunt, she was a believer. So he introduced me to that. I did accept Jesus, but we fell away quickly. There was just a like this clique in the church. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All these churches, big churches, have cliques. And so it turned me off. I'm like, what is this? I was looking for an escape, someone to help me, anything, because no one else was able to help me. And so I was like, well, what if I could turn to God? But because of these weird things that were going on in the youth group and whatnot, I was like, yeah, I'm
You want
no,
to talk about
not what
what
I'm
you
looking
saw?
for.
Because
Hmm?
I think the problem is a lot of us, we see stuff that goes on in the church. It kind of turns people away. If
Yes.
what it again, if you don't mind, what was it that you were seeing that kind of turned you off?
They were all sleeping with each other. They were all talking about
Oh,
each other behind each other's back. It was just
oh
drama, as
man.
if it was a continuation or, a little side project while I was in high school I was going to another place that was just like high school. And I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
Man. Someone on YouTube named Remlet says, "Hi Nicole, I am watching you. You are very brave. I fully support you."
Thank you.
All right. Cool. Okay. So when was this that you encountered that little group? What freshman you said?
Yeah, so I was 15 when my cousin introduced me to that group.
So your first introduction to Christianity was just awful. And what
Yep,
you saw?
it
Okay.
wasn't a
Yeah.
good experience from the people there. I did have one experience with God though, and it was during time where everyone gets up and worships before the service actually starts. And for some sort of reason, I just decided to go lay on the floor face down, kind of like this, and just start
Mhm.
praying. And the next thing I know, because I was talking to God in my head the whole time. The next thing I know, someone's tapping me on my shoulder and they're like, "Are you okay?" They're like, "You've been here the whole time," because they left the main part of where they worshipped, and the youth group went into another room, and they're like, "You were passed out this whole time?" I'm like, "No, I was like talking to God the whole time, but I completely lost time. It was as if time didn't even move at all." And
Okay.
so that was
That's
one
actually
experience that I had that
that's
I've
your
always remembered and always kept in my
right.
memories, but it wasn't enough for me to stay with the faith,
Right. Okay.
or at
Uh
least, but go ahead.
how was your senior year of high school? Like how were you acting? Were you influenced by other people, or were you kind of pretty much all the high school was pretty much the same?
Throughout high school, I was pretty much the same. I wasn't into the partying and all that kind of stuff that the other kids were into. You could kind of describe me as plain Jane. They're like, "You're just not exciting. You're kind of boring." I've always been that way. Um,
Okay.
but senior year, I was 17 when I was a senior, and I ended up finding this guy that I met at Starbucks, and he grew up in the church, like homeschooled
Okay.
and like in Hope Chapel kind of stuff his whole life, his whole family, all his brothers. And so that kind of sparked up the whole going back to God kind of thing. And so we started dating, but he was 23 and I was 17. So I was looking for someone who was more mature because I wasn't attracted to anyone that was in high school. I'm like, you guys are all boys, you
Yeah.
know, and I wanted someone
Okay.
who was a little bit more mature. Not someone who was into partying and all that kind of stuff. You know what most people do in high school.
Okay.
And
So, do you remember what was the name of the first church you actually ever went into?
I think it was Calvary.
Which
I
one?
think so. It's been so long, but it was a very
Okay.
very small. Or do you remember that little small church that was over by PV Bowl, like behind it?
No, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay. And when was this? Just during yours, like senior year?
For Hope
So
Chapel?
whenever you went, yeah,
Oh,
that was still
when I first started, I was 15, and then when I went back, I met Michael when I was 17. So then I went to Hope Chapel with him, and
okay.
then that
And
relationship wasn't really good because then we started messing around.
uh,
And to me, I was still a baby in the faith, and being with a guy didn't like raise any red flags for me. I didn't know any better,
right.
but he should have. Looking back at it, he should have known better.
Yeah.
And then we were together till I was 19, and he cheated on me. So there was another bad experience of someone who's
Yeah.
supposed to be a Christian cheats on me and then leaves me basically.
Yeah.
So you could see the pattern of my dad, the prominent male figure in my life. Every time a girl's dad doesn't treat her well, you end up with men issues later because you're always kind of searching for that acceptance from a man, that love from a man that you never got from your father.
So because of that, you stopped going to the Hope Chapel?
Yes. I didn't want to see him and his family there. I mean, like I said, his whole family grew up in there, and they worked there. They volunteered there, and also there. That church is pretty big. It's is that Manhattan Beach that it's in? I think not Hermosa, right? Manhattan. Um,
If it's the one I'm thinking of, I think it's Hermosa. If it's the one I'm thinking of.
Either or, but yeah, that's a huge church, right? And so there was also cliques in that too. And once again, I was just like, goodbye.
Okay. All right. So after high school, did you go to college? Did you do anything? What did you do after high school?
I didn't go to college. I went straight to working because I wanted to have my own car so I could escape my house. So
Okay.
I immediately went to full-time working, office jobs, here and there. Um, but then I met another guy when I started working for my cousin.
Okay.
It was my cousin's roommate, and that's where the more bad stuff, um, the partying and stuff like that I didn't do in high school. That's when that started.
Okay.
And at that point, I wasn't walking with God at all. Wasn't even thinking about it. I think it's pretty safe to say that I thought the church was just a cult because of my past experiences. Like there's no God here. You guys are all the same.
Right. Yeah.
So this guy that I
unfortunate.
ended up with, he got me mixed up in some stuff, and long story short, I ended up almost dying. At 21, I was in the hospital, circling the drain pretty much. I had slipped into a coma. They had to put a body bag on me to keep my body warm because my body temperature was 92. Normal is 98. My heart rate was at 200, so my heart was beating so fast that I could have had a heart attack, or it could have stopped. I could have stopped breathing. So I had like 4 doctors and like 4 nurses making sure that I was staying alive. And I forget how many hours later, probably took like 12 or more hours for me to come out of that. But I remember seeing my mom at the foot of the bed, and she told me afterwards that they asked her if she wanted any kind of preacher or whatever to come in because they thought I was going to die. They said I had like 20 minutes to live.
So what?
But of course, my
You don't
mom
mind
didn't
sharing?
believe. So
No,
yeah,
if
my
you
mom
don't
didn't
mind
believe,
sharing,
so she said no.
what? Sorry. If you don't mind sharing, what got you there? Like what happened?
Drugs.
Oh,
Drugs,
okay.
and because I forgot my insulin, because like I said, I'm type 1 diabetic, I didn't have my insulin on me. So my blood sugar went through the roof. So anything over 150 is considered where I need to start correcting with insulin. My blood sugar was over 1,000. I should have been dead. And let me tell you,
How old were you at
I
this
did
time?
nothing. I was 21.
21. Okay.
And because I completely was like, nope, God's not real, none of this, I would have died in my sin.
Yeah.
But by the grace of God, he kept me alive. I shouldn't have been alive at all. And I didn't see anything. There was no white light. There was no meeting angels or anything like that. It was just darkness. And I imagine that's what it would be like if you didn't have God.
Okay. After this, obviously you survived. How, did it change you in any way after that?
Spiritually, no. Unfortunately, I
Okay.
guess I was just stubborn about that part, but it made me want like the truth and justice, and it kind of excuse me, it kind of made me who I am, like molded me into who I am, where I have a big heart. I really do. And sometimes I could hide that, but I really want justice for people and the truth, no more lies, no more fake people. And so that helped me on my journey when I finally found God many years later. But once again, I ended up in another relationship for 15 years. I ended up with another narcissist.
Oh man.
Not exactly like my dad, because there's different types of them, but I ended up with a narcissist. And I guess it's kind of like you just end up repeating the same cycle until you're completely done. Well, I guess I wasn't done at that point. It was either the lesser of two evils. Do I go hang out with this guy, or do I sit at home with my abusive father?
Right.
And once again, I was chasing, I want to be accepted. I want to be loved by a man. And it's always chasing after them. And it's with a narcissist, it's never good enough. They make it known to you that what you're doing is never good enough. They're manipulating you into wanting to do more and always blaming yourself. Oh, well, if I did more, maybe he would love me. So I spent 15 years with that one guy, wasted most of, a good chunk of my life with this guy. And then towards the end of it, I went to go house sit for my aunt. They went to Costa Rica. And so that gave me three and a half weeks away from this guy. And we ended up getting into an argument over the phone. And when I hung up the phone, I was like, universe, I'm done. I don't know who's out there, but I'm done. And you need to help me because I can't do it on my own. That was God. Immediately. Immediately, he put things in my life that made me not go back to this guy. I couldn't. Like for example, Loki, my cat. I wanted a cat. When I got this apartment, I wanted a cat because I've always had cats in my life. Well, it just so happened to be perfect timing when me and that guy break up. Loki ends up in my lap. And he was 5 weeks old. I had to take care of him. So I couldn't go over my ex's house and start that cycle all over again and pretend that everything's just going to go back to normal. No, I had a little baby kitten that I had a responsibility to and to take care of. And so he was kind of like my little emotional support animal and my responsibility. And it helped me to stay here and not go back. Okay. And then, I met Jessica, Jessica. And she is a sister in Christ. And so she introduced me to church a few times. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go, and there was nothing.
But you seem hesitant though, right? Because you already had 2 previously bad experiences. So
yes.
I can only imagine how you probably felt.
Okay, well, my thoughts were, yeah, they're nice to your face, but
yeah,
that's it, So when I went these couple times, I could feel it tugging on my heart, like, that calling that God's like, hello, knocking on the door. But it took me a little while. And then because I lived by myself and had all this time to myself now, because I wasn't preoccupied with my ex, I just noticed some things like on YouTube started to show up. And I started to question reality, like the government and like stuff being put on our food and all that kind of stuff. You know how they say conspiracy theorists, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of it's true. But I was drawn to it because of the truth of it. Like I said, I've always wanted justice and I've wanted truth. And I didn't want fake people in my life. So that's how it paved the way to me starting to see these things and notice these things. And then I started to search it out. And the topic of God came back up in some of these videos. And I started to listen to them. And then it was almost like one day where a light bulb had just turned on. And I started bawling my eyes because I was like, oh my God. I'm like, God, you're real. You were real. It wasn't you the whole time. It was people that messed up the faith, of another, all the cliques and everything that was going on. But it was never God. That didn't represent God. And so I started to look into it further. And I gave my life to Christ. And I think I cried for like 2 days straight, just saying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
And when was this? Around when? How old were you at this time?
So I got my apartment in 2016. And then I say about 2018, I came to Christ. So I was 33,
Okay.
which is kind of funny because, you know, they all say that Jesus died at 33. And I'm like, I see you guys. See ya.
Okay.
But
So
ever since then, I've had such zeal for chasing after God and knowing his mysteries and his creation and the truth. I wanted the truth.
but do you know the mystery of Christ from Ephesians 3? We
Yes,
talked about
we
that today.
learned that today.
Denora, if you're watching, I'm gonna test you. So yeah, okay, cool. So from 33 to, we're probably about the same age now. What changed in your life, and what has gotten you to where you're at now? That's like what, like a 7-year roughly from when you accepted Christ to now. So what has God done for you? What have you done to change your old ways? How have you been able to deal with all the stuff that you dealt with in the past, and like everything? What has happened in the past 7 years to get you to where you're at now?
Well, no longer was I chasing after men to fill this void, this bottomless void that they could never fill. I would always get disappointed because they never met my expectation of being loyal or truthful or just a good person. But the only one who filled that was God, nobody else. And that's what I was looking for. And when God provided that, it was a relief, an absolute relief. And I've been serving him ever since then. I absolutely love God. He saved my life. And he had me for a good few years in isolation, because I even though Jessica, you know, was my sister and stuff, she kind of had her own thing going on. And I had one other friend who was a Christian, but it wasn't that we ever went to church on a regular basis or anything like that. So I could say that mostly I was isolated. And I didn't have that prior knowledge of, like, you know, all the stuff that Dale mentioned in his interview, the different denominations and stuff. Like, I didn't have any of that previous knowledge. So I just asked God, I was like, you know, you have a clean slate here, just teach me. And I would come across things, you know, have you ever heard of like the law of attraction, or
Yeah.
kind of like that new age Christianity stuff? And I would see that kind of pop up. But every time I went to seek God and want to learn something, I would always pray, like, give me that discernment, like have those red flags pop off when something ain't right. But it's good that he didn't keep me from those things. It let me learn this is right and that's wrong. There is no law of attraction thing. None of that new age Christ consciousness garbage. You know, none of that's real. None of that is of God. So he took me through these processes of learning that, and he helped me work on my self confidence. Because then at that point I was like, I don't care what men think, or I don't care what anyone thinks about me. And if they think I look crazy, and or all of a sudden you just made this big huge change, and you know, you're just stupid or crazy for thinking God's real, didn't care. Like, well, that sucks for you, but but for me, you know, he's my savior. So
Okay. But
I wasn't
yeah,
I had more confidence. So I did end up meeting someone.
you read my mind. We're gonna go into there. So I know you had another test recently. So
I had another
share
test,
about that.
and so I met a guy, and I'd say like for 4 years during that isolation period, for the most part, I didn't feel alone at all. I was cool, didn't need to be with anybody. But then towards the end, I started to get a little lonely, because I'm like, well, this walk is kind of lonely. We're not meant to do this alone. And I didn't have any friends, you know, to really do this journey together. And so I'm like, I'm kind of getting a little bit lonely here. And I started to get depressed. Seeing all the evil that goes on in this world, I'm like, what's there left to live for if I'm just going to be in my apartment alone? I'm just going to die alone. So I kind of I kind of joke around, but I'm like, God, you either give me a partner or take me home.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that I went looking for. Um, but I was on TikTok, and we were on the side of TikTok where we're talking about laws that were going on, and the whole COVID thing that went on. And
Mhm.
so I ended up meeting this guy on TikTok, and we ended up really liking each other. Totally wasn't expecting it. And so I agreed to go meet him, went out to Idaho to meet him, and made a very, very dumb mistake and got married, because we're like, well, we figured that we knew each other. We were so very similar. He seemed so legit. Even he fooled you.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the first half of our relationship was good, and we had like we tried to do a little ministry, starting a little YouTube channel like you.
Yeah. I remember. I
And
remember.
we went to huge events that they had, like in LA, where a lot of believers were, and we were protesting and stuff like that. Like, there was the first half of our relationship was good, but then when he started a new job, because he was a photographer, he decided that he was just going to go to downtown LA and go to the clubs. And he told me, I just want this content in my portfolio, and then I'll just get out. I'm not going to stay at this place. Because I was like, why would you want to go to clubs? That's not something Christians do. Like, that's not a good environment. But he told me that he wasn't going to stay. Well, he ended up staying, and he ended up getting deeper into that whole crowd. And long story short, he started drinking more, and I found out he was using drugs. I knew he had a past with drugs, but I thought he was over it, just like I'm over it. I'm like, well, I'm not going to judge his past, because I have a past too with
Mhm.
substance abuse. So, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, but things quickly started to go downhill from there. And just some things, personal things that he would say, made me question, like, was I duped? Am I doing something wrong? I always tend to question myself first, like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I spent many nights on the couch crying out to God. And the last time I cried out to God, I asked God to please take this away from him, meaning his job and that environment and those friends that he had made. Um, well, God had other plans, and so my ex-husband, ended up abandoning me. He gave me a kiss and said, I'll be back. I'm going to work. I love you. I'll see you when I get back. He never came back. And for 7 days, I didn't hear anything. I went all the way to the morgue, thinking that I was going to find his dead body, because where he worked, it looks like Skid Row, where there's
Yeah.
bums and everything on the street. And it's very, very dangerous in that area. And so this whole time I'm thinking he died. He just died, because no way would he leave me. So I was asking his friends, have you seen him? Have you seen him? Like, has anyone seen him? And finally, one of his friends called me and said, well, I have good news and bad news. And I was like, what? And he's all, well, he's alive. So I was relieved. But he said the bad news is that he's with another woman.
Ugh.
And till this day, he's never tried to contact me, say I'm sorry, nothing. So here's another experience of a Christian hurting me, and a man. But this time, because I had those years of isolation one-on-one with God, it took me about a week of not being sad anymore. And I immediately went into, I forgive. I completely forgive. And I could see why God removed him, and not just the job and his friends and stuff. He removed him from my life, because I was the one actually chasing after God, still wanting that relationship with God, where my ex-husband, there's nothing there. Um, in fact, there was a one time where he was like, oh, you could drink or you could do drugs as long as it doesn't cause you to sin or whatever. It's not a sin in itself. And there was one time where I told him, I was like, what spirit is inside of you? Because that's not the Holy Spirit. I'm like, you better get that demon out of you and out of my house. And so there was another time where he was drinking, and he was missing his kids. because he has 3 kids and he just left them with the mother. And I thought he was really feeling these emotions because he was crying and he was a wreck. It was probably just the alcohol. But I had some anointing oil and I just prayed over it because he was acting crazy. And I put that on him, and I was praying. And when I looked in his eyes, it was almost like this demon or whatever. Like you could tell his eyes changed. His eyes weren't dark anymore. They just like lightened up as if the real him came through after I prayed and put that oil on him. And it freaked me out because I had never seen that before. To this point, I have never seen any kind of demonic spirit or anything like that. My family has, and they're not believers. They've seen a bunch of stuff, but I never have. And at that point, I was like, yes, something's going on here. But hindsight, I could see why God removed him. He probably would have killed me because every time I get into these relationships, it always affects my health. And because I was the one supporting us, mostly, like I was the one who's paying the rent and paying most of the bills and the food and stuff like that, I got all the way down to like 119 pounds. I looked sick and I felt sick. And that's another thought where I was like, if this was a relationship filled with God, I wouldn't be this way. I wouldn't be sick. And I wouldn't be stressed out. I'd be sleeping in my own bed. I wouldn't be sleeping on the couch. So, but even though that hurt me more than that 15-year relationship, because it is someone I actually decided to marry and thought he was a Christian, it hurt more, but I was able to forgive faster and see what was going on. And till this day, I still pray for him. You know, I pray for him to return back to God and to his children. But, you know, I just have to trust God that eventually that'll happen. But I know you had mentioned like, well, what if he came back and wanted to reconcile and stuff like that? I think that period is over. It's been over a year. And so I don't think I would reconcile. Who knows where we'd be in the future, you know? So at this point, I would have to say no.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's a lot. Okay. Let's
And
switch topics.
these are just little details. There's far more, but you get the gist of. My life has been hard.
Yeah. So the majority of your experience with Christianity and Christians has just been of fakeness and hypocrisy. That's what I'm getting, right?
Yeah.
Is that why you were always hesitant to ever try to look for a new church?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't want to belong to a big church. It's not personal. When you go there, they don't even know your name. You can't ask questions. You don't really get to know anybody. They still have their little groups of people that they know. Like you can see all these little pockets of people after the service is over, and they just kind of stick to themselves. But I wanted something more like a family. And so when you presented a home fellowship, I was like, I think I will try this. Because at that point, you know, I was a believer, but I didn't say no to it because I saw the difference in it. Like, okay, this is going to be a smaller group. It's going to be more family style. Let's go ahead and try this. And I love our little group.
Which is the topic that I was going to get into. Tell us about what you see. Obviously, there's still stuff in our home fellowship that we want to fix and change, and we've had issues with. Let's be real, fake people coming in and out. So, but from your experience, can you compare and contrast the home fellowship versus your experience in a traditional church?
So, like I was saying, the home church it's more intimate. Obviously, it's more like a family of how you see in biblical days of how it was supposed to be, where they broke bread together, they ate together, they sang together, they had prayer requests and were there for one another. That's what it should be about. that's what I really, really like about it. And despite the fact that we've had people that come and go, say that they want to be there or say that they're believers or whatever, well, they'll just weed themselves out. That's just how I look at it. But the
Right.
ones who are real believers and really treat this as a family, they stay. And so even though our group is small, I don't care what the numbers are. It's quality over quantity kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And it's been a huge blessing to me. It gets me out of my house. It gets me to fellowship with you guys. It gets me closer to God, learning His Word even more. It's not something like learning the Word isn't something where you just go, okay, I know everything. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a lifelong journey. Um, and I'm really blessed and just glad that you started the home fellowship and that I have you.
So this is exactly why I've seen the benefit as well, regardless of all the little issues.
Right.
Which is why I told you, like, once we're done with Hebrews, I want to start trying to meet 3 times a week. Right. So obviously Saturdays we're gonna keep it at the outdoors, hoping that somebody could hear or we can witness the people. And
Yeah,
then obviously
I would love to be with you.
Sundays we're gonna be at the rec room where you live. That's where we're gonna do the Lord's Supper and all that stuff. And then when we start doing Thursdays, it's gonna be in the nighttime. So that's another day. I just don't like the modern Christianity. All right, well, I'm at church for Sunday 1 hour, and then the rest of the week, like, there's nothing. Right.
Right. And,
So
I'm hoping that our little group, when Thursdays, since it's at night, some people in this apartment, they that are believers, they still go to work during the day or they have things during the day. So I'm hoping that Thursday nights, maybe that's when they could come because they can't make it on Saturdays or Sundays. So I'm hoping it opens that door up for them to where we could have more Thursday nights. And eventually, when we get a little bigger group, then we could start bringing in some more food, snacks, and stuff, and maybe even
yeah,
some games together to make us have bonding moments with each other. That's a goal.
yeah. I mean, we've already talked about this. There's some things that I do want to change, like we did today. Like we made sure that the music, spending more time with music, and the whole thing with the food. That's something again we can fix. Honestly, I really enjoy the Lord's Supper, like how we do it. You cook the
The
what's it
bread.
called, the bread, and then I enjoy how we do that. Um,
And it gets everyone to participate, and it's
right,
another bonding experience to where we all, well, most of us drink from the same cup, we eat from the same bread. It's
right,
like being in biblical days.
yeah, exactly. Which is why that's why I want to do it that way. Um, so yeah, so you see the benefits of the home fellowship. It's just this, like I
Absolutely.
said,
And
from my
it's
point of
the
view, and I said this when I interviewed Doug, like the frustration is not the number, is the people. And like
yeah,
as your experience with Christians, the people let you down all the time.
all the time.
That's right. YouTuber, what is it? Enter the Stars. That's Hebrews 11 right there, 25. Not to forsake the gathering, and which is why I want us to gather more 3 times a week now. Um, so the frustration
By the
is,
way, Enter the Stars, that's my friend Casey.
oh, hey Casey, how
Yeah.
are you?
So he's also a believer.
Uh, all right, awesome. So yeah, I just this is the reason why I chose to teach Acts when we first started the home fellowship, was so we can see what they did in the beginning and try to take what we can from there and mimic as much as possible. And it wasn't just once a week; it was several times during the whole different home. Eventually, I would like us to. We're going to be meeting 3 days, Lord willing. Eventually, one day with you, one day at my home, one day at Michael's. Just to switch it up, and whoever's hosting can be take care of the food, music, whatever. Eventually, like I have a lot of ideas, but we're still trying to. Let's be realistic. It's really just me, you, and Michael Jordan, the three who are like 100% there all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing against Martina and Skyler. They kind of just come and go. Really, just more on Sundays. So they're welcome, and I'm glad they do come. I'm not saying that, but I wish they would be more.
Well,
Would
Skylar's brand new to the faith as well, so I'm
right?
hoping
I get
that
it. I get it. Yeah,
with our home fellowship, I'm hoping that she doesn't get to experience that fakeness and whatever like I did. That she actually sees value in our
yeah,
little home fellowship
yeah.
and
No, it's tough,
doesn't get
especially when you're a new beginner, you're a new believer, and I get it. I think one of the downfalls of the traditional church is poor teaching and lack of discipleship.
yeah,
Because half the time the pastors don't even know who you are.
right.
So how
They don't know what
and
you're
then
doing.
if they don't know what you're going through, and when you go to the traditional church, you just sit down like you're a spectator. You can't be like, "Hey, can I get prayer requests?" Can it? No, we do that all the time. We all go
Right.
in a circle. Everybody talks, and we pray for each other, and we hold each other accountable. But the problem is, if you're not there, um, it's kind of hard to do that. So I'm hoping that
Well,
with time
I will say Denora though, she's more of our home fellowship than people
that
that live
and
down the
I
street.
was gonna say that earlier, Denora, because I know you're listening. Denora, who lives 4 or 5 hours away from us,
Shows up.
why is it that she shows up to all the Bible studies, and now what we're doing with her, where she's gonna join us whenever she can, every other week or something, through FaceTime, like she did today, and join our home fellowship. This is a
Yep.
woman 4 or 5 hours away, and she is more dedicated than people that we know who live in the same area, and they have a million excuses why they can't do it.
Yep.
But this woman who is 4 or 5 hours away will do it. Lord willing, Denora, we're gonna get you on here. But you know what I'm saying? That shows the commitment that it doesn't matter how far away. If you really care, you're gonna be there. It's important, and she makes time. All these other people that we know that are Christians who live 5-10 minutes from you or from me, oh man, it's one excuse after another. But they're over here like, oh man, I'm Team Jesus. I love God. I'm a super Christian. Woo, 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 woo. That's what frustrates me. And I have the same problem with my business in the gym. It's the same issue. It's the same frustration that I have. And because anyone who really knows me, I will do everything in my power to help you, to encourage you, to motivate, to teach you, because that's the gift that I have, which is what I use for our home fellowship. You may have a different gift that you can do for us. We all have different gifts. And it's frustrating to see people claim to be Christians. You can tell that no, it's not a priority. And
There was a time where you helped me with my groceries because there was a moment where my money had got cut off and I was worried how I was going to feed myself. And you're without question, you're like, here. And I was like, what?
Uh, again, this is not.
It
I'm not
surprised
boasting
me.
in myself. I'm not
Not,
boasting,
yeah.
but part of the ministry, believe it or not, and I don't like to talk about money because I know how people get. But part of my ministry is every month, whatever anyone gives or whatever I put out of my money in that account. Obviously, I'm be honest. I use it to buy this or to for the shirts or the sweaters that you have, or just gifts for people. One of the main things is every month I want to donate ministry money to someone who needs it. You recommended the dude from TikTok, one sister from Instagram whose son just died, donated. Again, I'm not boasting, but that's part of the ministry too. Is I get it. People think that the church is well, they just want money. I know God is going to hold me accountable to all the money that we have in the home fellowship, the ministry account. God's going to judge me what I do with that money. And I'm not there. You don't see me really asking nobody nothing. Yeah, in the introduction, but you don't see me hitting up our home fellowship. Hey guys, make sure you tithe. Like, I don't do that. This
No,
is
you
this
haven't
is
asked
what
us
it
once.
is. I just say it in the intros. If you want to do it, do it. Not, it's okay, because I will put my money that God blessed me with, and I'm going to put it in there, and I will use that money to help people in need. And I've done that not just for you, for other people, buying
Yeah.
gifts, not because I expect anything in return. It's because God has put that in my heart now. Hey, I've blessed you financially. Now I want you to use that money to bless others. So when I see that need, I'm able to do. So again, not
And that's like
boasting.
family. It's like,
Right, which is what the
Mom,
church was
I
doing.
need
Remember
food
what
or
in Acts? Remember in Acts, they were selling their possessions because make
yeah,
sure that everybody needed.
right.
Um, that's the way this it should be. No, like well, I get it. The topic of money is like, I get it. But you know what? If you're doing it the biblical way, and you trust the person handling the money, you don't have to worry about that. Because
Well, that's
again,
another thing where if it's a huge church like that, you're not going to know where that money is going.
exactly,
You're just not. But
exactly,
when you're in a
exactly.
home fellowship, you will know where it's
Yeah,
going.
yeah. Well, again, the shirts that everybody has, where do you think it came out of? It's from there. This equipment, the thing is from there. From where I give some money to like Doug's ministry because he's obviously my teacher, and and then I look for other ministries or people who need help because money, so I'm not like that. I just like I said, I don't like to talk too much about money because but it's a tool and God has blessed me with it, and whoever gives, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Whether I have $100 in the ministry or $1,000 in the ministry, that is going to be for the home fellowship, for this, for that. If I ever need to buy food for our home fellowship, that's where it's going to come out of. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
um, man, I forgot lost my train of thought there. But yeah, so that's the issue, man. We really want. I get it. Not everybody's. Forgive me if I sound prideful. Not everybody's at our theological levels. I get it, but as a teacher, you should be able to teach people to get them to that level. What I just want for our home fellowship is commitment. Don't
Yeah.
just run your mouth. Same thing like a client for my gym business. Don't just run your mouth and just show up. No, put in the hard work. Study your Bible. Pray. Meet up. Now we have 3 different days a week. There's no excuse why you can't fellowship. You know what I'm saying? Especially when most of the people that will probably end up coming are already live in the same building. You know what I'm saying? And
Exactly.
all the other people that we kind of know who claim to be Christians, they live 5-10 minutes from where we're at. But then Denora, 5 hours away, she's there Monday, Thursday. Now she's gonna start trying to join us on Saturday, and then when we go on Thursday nights, she's gonna join us through FaceTime. So you see that's the type of commitment that I like, and that's why I'll do anything for Denora to help. And again, what
And
I've
that
done,
builds,
for Denora, that's between her and I. I'm not gonna sit here and blast it out there, but that's it. Those type of people, committed people, is why I don't care. You need $1,000. Boom, here you go. You need this. Boom, here you go. I won't even ask for nothing in return. I don't expect nothing in return. It's just I appreciate someone who really puts in the effort and shows that, hey, I'm committed to this home fellowship, to this and to that, to serving Christ. Those are the people that I want. Not like
and
we've
that builds
experienced.
trust with us.
Yeah,
You have to be able, you saw all my examples of where my trust was broken. So for us to
yeah,
be there for one another, if it's not money, if it's you need this, you need that, whatever it is, we could rely
right.
on one another. And that's
Exactly.
really important.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. And then we see
not
even
just
how Mike.
talking the talk, but walk the
Like,
walk,
yeah, exactly. You got to talk, walk the walk. Even like Michael now. Michael's starting to open up. Remember how before he didn't want to pray? He didn't want now. I mean, we got to push him a little bit, but he's now talking more and more. Martina
Yeah.
too. She's starting to talk a lot more, answer more of the questions. And Lord
Yep.
willing, the more Skylar comes in and she feels more comfortable around us, and she starts to learn, she'll feel that same way. And I get it. It's the
Right. It's a
first time she's
process.
ever did it. It's a process.
Yeah.
But it's the commitment that is going to get us there to where we're going to grow and we're all going to be a lot spiritually stronger. Oh my God, run out of time. All right. We got 10 seconds. All right, Nikki, thank you for the interview. And I will see you
Welcome.
tomorrow. Make sure you cook the bread and have a good night. God bless.
Bye.